So before I introduce Peter and his journey, just wanted to welcome all of you. My name's Emily Kakuzo. I am the president of AMA Boston. Previously, I was president-elect and then VP of Collegiate. So I've been around AMA Boston for about 5 years now, and super excited to see a lot of familiar names. I know a lot of you aren't on camera. I encourage you to be on camera, but I know after work sometimes it's a little hard. So I appreciate you joining, appreciate your time, and we're so excited to welcome Peter and his words of wisdom and many pearls of wisdom that we'll learn today. And so I'll give a quick introduction, Peter. I don't actually love I don't like reading off the bio, but what I'll tell you about Peter is that he's become quite an engaging public speaker, but really in the beginning faced some challenges and I we were just chatting beforehand and don't hate him, but he's a Yankees fan, so but we won't hold that against him. But when he was growing up, he faced significant communication challenges such as having a lisp and stuttering, and he was shy and introverted. So I think a lot of us can kind of relate to that. And I know when I was a kid growing up, I was also very shy and introverted and still am. So interested to hear how Peter has been able to overcome that. And then throughout his career, he really learned the vital role of being a strong public speaker, and especially being a strong public speaker in the business world. So he's a seasoned speaker. He's spoke to an audience of over 300,000 people at companies, associations, universities across more than 50 countries, which, wow, Peter, we'll have to talk more about that. His passion for public speaking is extends beyond his performances, and he's helped executives, entrepreneurs, and other subject matter experts really transform from that frustrated and anxious space of public speaking to being more confident and calm and credible when they do public speak. So you have to check out his award-winning book, The Captivating Public Speaker Book, which I will put in the chat so we can all buy that and be able to read it. So um, congrats to you, Peter, for your accolades for winning for your book, and we really appreciate all that you do for AMA Boston. And I'll give one more fun fact. Peter was previously part of the AMA Rhode Island chapter, which is no longer. But to give you a little sneak preview, we are actually opening up a AMA Rhode Island satellite chapter for in the next few months. So stay tuned for that and hear more information for those that are a bit more south or in the Rhode Island area. So Peter, over to you.
So that works out perfectly fine. With all that said, Emily and everyone else, thanks for being here. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate helping people. What I love to do is help people become more effective speakers. And the thing is, anybody can become a more effective speaker. And you might wonder why you want to be. And if you want to be more successful in business and attract more clients and attract more profitable clients or get into the marketing department of a major corporation, whatever your goal is for your marketing or anything else in business, you want to use public speaking not as a soft skill. I hate that term because it's not. The same thing with leadership skills. They're not soft skills, they're power skills. That's what separates you from your competition, whether it's outside competition, your actual competitors in business, or even within the workplace. That's a major separation point is when people can communicate more effectively. And we don't have to go any further than looking at this guy, Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett, here's a guy who, if he hadn't given most of his fortune away and still built it up, he'd still be the wealthiest person on the planet. And he's made thousands upon thousands of investments. Yet he says that his greatest investment of all time was when he took his public speaking course. Now, if you go to his office in Omaha and you look behind his head, the wall behind him, his undergrad from University of Nebraska is not framed and hanging up there. His MBA from Columbia is not framed and hanging up there. But his public speaking certificate from when he was 27 years old is very simply framed and hanging up on the wall behind his head. He puts that much emphasis on it because he knows without that, he would not have gotten where he wanted to be.
Right.
So keep that in mind about how much that means to people like us and what we could do when we become more effective public speakers. So during our time together, you're going to learn a few things. You're going to learn what public speaking is and what it isn't. You're going to learn about maybe controlling your nerves, not getting rid of them, nor do you want to get rid of your nerves. And then also how you can present with confidence and ease. And by doing this, you'll be on your way to being more calm, confident, and credible every time you speak in public. So why do we get nervous? We're supposed to get nervous. It's inside of us to get nervous. So when people come to me and say, can you help me get rid of your nerves? I'm saying, one, I don't want to do that. I wouldn't do it. Nor is it really possible. The feeling you feel might subside a little. It might subside a little sooner than it normally would, but it won't go away. To have it go away would be like asking an athlete to have their adrenaline subside. And that's when they say, you know what? I can't go back to spring training this year. I just don't feel it within me. I'm retiring. So we want that feeling of adrenaline coursing through us. But here's how you can help control it. You want to take it from being nervousness to excitement, nervousness to positive energy, nervousness to a tool you can use to help others. So we can go anywhere on the planet and ask people, when you're asked to speak, does your heart race? Does your blood pressure increase? If you're very light-skinned like me, you can see the blood go up through the throat into the cheeks looking like a thermometer. Do your knees get weak? Do your hands shake? Does your voice crack? Do you get sweaty? All of that is your mind and your body telling you something exciting or important is about to happen. And when we either try to fight it or we're not used to it, what happens is it overcomes us. We're trying to fight something that's just not going to give up. As a matter of fact, as you try to fight it, what your brain actually does is says, this isn't working, send more adrenaline. And all those feelings you have increase instead of starting to subside. And it's the adrenaline that also, by the way, have you ever had to get up for a minute and introduce yourself? And you're like, I know what I'm going to say. I know what I'm going to say. And then the person next to you sits down. It's your turn to stand up and you stand up and go, I have no idea what I was going to say. Or you bumble all the way through it. That's because when your adrenaline's going through your body, your memory actually decreases. Because if you're going to fight or run, fight or flight response, what do you need memory for? You need muscle memory. You don't need actual memory. And then your butt hits that chair and you're like, oh, I knew exactly what I was going to say and how I was going to say it. That's why that happens. So here's what I want you to do. We could spend 2 hours, 3 hours just talking about this, and I'm just going to cover nervousness very briefly. But what you want to do is breathe. Diaphragmatic breathing. For those of you who have given birth, practice yoga, meditation, you know it is a cleansing breath, filling your lungs at 100% as opposed to the 30% we use on a daily basis. That helps calm you down. It sends more oxygen to your brain, more blood to your extremities by doing that. Relax and breathe. You got to breathe anyway. You might as well do it right. In through your nose, out through your mouth like you're blowing through a straw. 2 or 3, not too many, you get lightheaded. And just do it nice and relaxing. And we'll talk more about this when we start talking about what public speaking actually is. It's not what many people believe it to be. And as we do this, then things will be obviously a little easier as you go on, but the more that you use it, the more it becomes a power skill and positive energy than being just nervous. And by the way, I'm a firm believer in what Mark Twain said back in the 1800s. There are two types of speakers: those who are nervous and those who are liars. Everybody gets nervous. Some of us just might call it excitement. And it is. We're excited. No different than if you love to go on roller coasters and I don't. I would call that fear as I get sweaty and all those things happen to my body. You would call it excitement. I can't wait for this to happen. All of that stuff. I have a client. Been working with her for years. She jumps out of perfectly good planes. I don't get it. But when we started working together, she was petrified of speaking. And now she's a world-class speaker. So she's something else. But she does the same thing. She's taken that same feeling, made it excitement, just like when she jumps out of a plane, as opposed to fearful. So when you can do that, when you can breathe, relax, and like I said, we'll go back into this in a few minutes, it'll be more than helpful for you. So let's go on to what public speaking is not. And public speaking is not the number one fear. It ranks well behind clowns, the fear of clowns, the fear of snakes, and the fear of stepping barefoot on a Lego. We fear those things. I often say you would rather, if fear was number one, which many people think it is, and it's just not. If fear were number one, you'd rather be in a silver tube or aluminum tube dropping 30,000 feet out of the air than being on stage. You'd rather be in a dark alley with a gun to your head than being in front of a room speaking to others. Makes no sense. So do people fear it? Yes, but not as much as they fear other things. And by the way, I'm petrified of all three of those things. I hate clowns. I don't like snakes. And God forbid I ever step on one of my grandkids' Legos when I'm at their house. So keep that in mind. It's not the number one fear. And let me talk to you a little bit about what public speaking also is not. We know it's not the number one fear. It's actually about number 7. But I'll illustrate this with a story that goes back 6, maybe 7 years. I was out in Long Beach, California for a conference. It was the first morning of the conference. I'm standing in line to get a coffee so I can go sit down and watch the conference begin. And a gentleman standing on my right, and out of nowhere, he says to me, "I don't need you." Excuse me? I don't need you. Like, I am so sorry, but you have me at a loss. I have no idea what you're talking about. And he says, "I see on your name badge that you're a public speaking trainer." And I said, "Yes, I am. I don't need you." That's awesome. Not everybody needs one. If you're a great speaker and you can help people with your speaking, that's fantastic. Good for you. Yep. You see, I have the guts to get up in front of people and I know what I want to say to them. I know my business. Like, again, that's fantastic. Here's the problem with that. There's a difference between knowing your business and having the guts to get up in front of people and knowing how to have brains and minds connect, which is what we do as speakers. It's a huge difference. I know how to put paint on canvas. I don't know how to paint a picture. Again, a huge difference. When I got out of school, I'll interrupt my own story here. When I got out of school, I went to work for Sony Corporation. I spent 9 years working for them in the marketing department. And then I went out on my own. When you're at Sony for a little while, you learn a little Japanese. And the Japanese have a word for when you know what you want to say and you have the guts to get up in front of people and say it. Does anybody know what that word is? Karaoke. Now, I'm being facetious, of course. It's not actually karaoke, but think about what karaoke is. You know what you want to sing, and you got the guts to get up there and do it. Now, most of us aren't that great at singing, And that's what karaoke is supposed to be. It's not necessarily supposed to be awesome. And for most of us, like me, unless the audience has had 3 beers and a shot, I'm probably not going to be that good. So when it comes to speaking, you want to make sure that it goes well beyond just being able to get up there and vomit information on people. And that's all we're doing. When all we do is vomit information, because that's what we know and that's what we're thinking, that I just have to get up there and share stuff. And that's what they say, right? Instead of delivering a presentation or giving a presentation or having a talk, it's share. Share information. It's just a polite way of saying showing up and throwing up, which again is what many of us do. So don't do that. Don't wing it. Think about what winging it is. Now, a lot of people get nervous and say, I'm so nervous about this. I have to give a presentation in a month. I'm going to put it off and put it off and put it off. Very, very unfortunate for a lot of reasons. One is what do? We wait till the night before, a couple of nights before, we sit down, try to put a presentation together, try to rush it. And then we deliver that presentation and go, man, it's a good thing I didn't waste time practicing and putting this together early because that sucked. I didn't feel confident. I could tell by the people looking at me that I wasn't connecting with them. Good thing I didn't put a lot of time into it. But you're all professionals. Let me ask you this. Would you hand in a report to superiors or a prospect or whomever? Would you hand in the first draft? When you were in school, did you hand in a first draft to the professor? If you were going to write an article for the Boston Business Journal, would you hand in the first draft? Most of us wouldn't. And truthfully, unless you're tremendous, hand in the first draft to a business journal, you'll get it back and probably not asked to hand in another one. So don't wing it. That's not public speaking. Like I said, that's just kind of showing up and throwing up. So what is public speaking? It's a lot of things. First of all, public speaking is connecting both on the conscious and the unconscious level. And that's the part people forget, the unconscious level. We think about the words we want to say. We know those will connect, or we learn later, maybe not. But we forget the unconscious. Would you agree that one of the purposes of public speaking is to inform? Kind of makes sense, right? Sharing information. I think you can step it up a little. You guys have been in business for a while. I gotta believe you've all been to a meeting. Let's say that meeting's an hour long. You get out of that meeting and you're walking down the hallway and go, I will never, ever get those 60 minutes back in my life. What a waste of time. I mean, we all know that many meetings have the word meaning has a bad connotation nowadays. It's not a good one. So what happens is people go to that meeting. Yeah, they get information. They're informed, but they weren't transformed. Someone who really wants to make a difference by speaking sets out to transform people, not inform them. Might you have to provide information? Sure. But if you don't transform them, that's time they'll never get back. So you might have experienced that. I'm sure you have. But it's worse when you were the speaker and everybody else is leaving saying, I'll never get that time back. So don't speak to inform, speak to transform. When I work with my clients, it's one of the first things we do is how do you want to transform them? Because if you don't know that, your audience never will. So make that adjustment in your head. Information's great, but how are you going to present it and carry through and have a call to action to make it a transformation? That's the key. So that's one mistake we have. We speak to inform, not transform. The other is It's all about connecting with them, right? Like I said before, connecting minds. So they want to hear what you're going to say for their benefit, not yours. They want to hear that. And what we do, however, is we hear you, Peter, you got to give a presentation. Oh my God, I hate giving presentations. Let me see what slides I have. You don't base your presentation on the slides. You do it the other way around, of course. Unfortunately, too many people base it on the slides they have. You want to connect with those people, then you have to go from the idea of having a presentation. Oh, by the way, there's no such thing as a PowerPoint or keynote presentation. Slides, slide decks, yes. Presentation, no. You're the presentation. So you want to go from thinking of it as a presentation and start thinking of it as a conversation. We have conversations all the time. Those are natural for us. Get away from this presentation thing. It brings up ideas in our heads that are not beneficial. But when we talk about having a conversation, that's a pretty cool thing. And we can have that conversation even when other people can't speak, talk back to you, even if it's one way. It's not even one way, really. It's still a two-way conversation because we can see reactions. And when we see reactions, such as people nodding their head, that's a pretty cool thing. We're on track here. We've engaged. When they smile, same thing. When one or more people, and especially if it's a bunch of people in unison, cock their head like the dog who can't understand its owner, you lost them. But you would do the same thing in a conversation. You're sitting having a cup of coffee with a friend across the table and they cock their head a little bit, you know you lost them. They nod, they're with you. They smile, they're with you. All these little things are things that make it a conversation, not a presentation. So here's what I want you to think about. Whether it's one person across a desk, 10 people in a conference room, or 1,000 people in an auditorium, it's still public speaking. Even one, because you're having that conversation. And once you get that mindset, then you get away from going back to the fear of public speaking of, oh my God, I'm good with one person, maybe two, but you give me 5, 10, 50, God forbid, 100, and I just melt. Yeah, there's a reason for that. The reason for that is you're trying to speak to 10, 25, 50, 100 people. You're trying to have a conversation with them. It can't be done. You can have a conversation with one. So if you want to be more confident when you speak, you want to make sure you connect with people when you speak. Right? As marketers, you know this. In any language, what's the sweetest sound to an individual? Their name. What's the second sweetest sound? The word you, because it still makes it about them. And when you do that, you choose the words that go along with you. You, your, Y-O-U apostrophe R-E, you'll, things like that. You're possessive. Those words are you words. So we start using those as opposed to using encompassing words like all of you. That's not speaking to a person. That's speaking to a group and trying to have a conversation. Change your mindset. Speak to one person, no matter how many. And I don't mean lock on one person who smiled when you said something and now they're your best friend and just speak to them by looking at only them. Speak to one individual at a time by using words like you. An example of that is the difference between how many of you like the Red Sox? And do you like the Red Sox? There's a difference. If you want to have people leave and say, Kim was speaking directly to me and only me, those are the things you want to do. Change that. All right, so let's get to more about what public speaking is. If you take nothing else away from this, nothing else away, take this. It's all about the audience. It's not about the speaker. The only person who ever cared that it was me up on stage was my mother, if she went to see me speak, which she did a couple of times. She's been dead for almost 20 years. I got no one. Not even my wife, who's my best friend of 35 years, comes and sees me speak anymore. She's seen me way too often. I've got no one who cares that it's me up on stage, and that's the way it should be. Metaphorically, we should take the light off the speaker and put it on the audience. It's about the audience, always and always will be. Make it about them. That takes the onus off of you. When I said before, I talk about something about being nervous, think of what we say to ourselves. What if I screw up? What if I forget what I'm going to say? What if I don't connect with them? What if they don't like me? What if something goes wrong that I'm doing? I, me, me, me. It's not about me. It's about them. So when you reverse that mindset and it's about the audience and that you're there to be of service to the audience, not to be a star, but to be of service, again, it's a pretty cool thing. Here's I think it's a cute little analogy, but let's say you and I are on a cruise ship. We're standing at the rail and you fall overboard. And right next to me is a life ring. And I immediately grab that life ring and I throw it out to you. And it lands a few feet away from you and you swim over to it, and that's going to keep you afloat while that ship turns around, or it can send out a small boat to get you. You're not going to come back on board and say, Peter, you could have thrown that better. I had to swim 3 feet to get it. When we're in service to others and we're helping them accomplish something that's going to benefit them, it's a pretty cool thing. You don't have to worry about exactly how you're going to throw it. Now, if you don't rehearse, I also believe in what Dale Carnegie said, those who don't rehearse get exactly what they deserve. If you don't rehearse, if you don't prep and all those things, and it doesn't go well, that's different. But if you do your due diligence, you don't have to be perfect. And I'll tell you right now, you're not going to be. I wish I could be, not even close. And my wife has seen me speak enough to remind me every once in a while, you're not perfect and won't be. So here's what to do now. Refocus your energy, refocus your mindset, and refocus the results. Not that you had a great talk. The results that the audience got what they needed to accomplish whatever they were there to get. That's what public speaking is. That's what makes a difference. That's what you want to do. Those nerves, again, will they go away? No, but you'll be able to manage them much, much better. So how are we going to make this happen? How are we going to be more confident? And it's just this. When you get better at this, just like anything else in life, you will become more confident. Think about when you first got into your job. You were asked questions that you didn't know the answer to. Hell, that still happens. For most of us anyway, does with me. You were in situations where you didn't know what to say. You weren't fluent with the language yet and all the shorthand and the things that we use when we're selling to prospects or working in a corporation. That didn't come on day one. That evolved. So as you became more competent in what you do, your confidence grew. Same here. And because confidence comes from competence, let's talk about being more competent in this. What does an audience, 1, 10, 100, 1,000, makes no difference. On the unconscious level, What does an audience look for in a speaker? Speaker could be up on stage. They could be in the front of a room, on Zoom. Put it in the notes if you want. What does an audience on the unconscious level look for in a speaker? Anybody? We talked about it. Confidence. If you don't have confidence in me, why would you have confidence in my content? We look for confidence. And most of the time, we don't even realize that. We don't realize, because it's the unconscious level, we don't realize we're looking for confidence. But again, if I don't have confidence, I'll either stop listening, or let's say I went to look for a marketer and I didn't have confidence in that person. I'll just look for another one. And I might even leave saying, boy, he knew what he was talking about. I just didn't feel comfortable and I don't know why. So I got to go elsewhere. That's why you want that confidence to peak. That's why you want to build that. So whether it's working with someone like me, whether it's going to Toastmasters, whether it's reading a book, watching videos, practicing with someone else who's an accomplished speaker, whatever it might be, become more competent in this so you can have more confidence. You'll be surprised what it does. Did okay, like I said before, did okay for Warren Buffett. Okay, so let's talk about a few things that you can do. And these come to the unconscious level. Voice. Your voice matters. Now, I don't mean the timbre of your voice. I don't mean that you have this low radio voice, anything like that. Doesn't really make too much of a difference. It's not to say some voices aren't extremely distracting, but that's a totally different story. For the vast majority of us, it's how you use that voice. They say the voice is the greatest instrument you have. It makes a difference in how others perceive you. It makes a difference on your success in business and in the community. How you use your voice matters. So let's look at some of the things. Have you ever been in a situation, if you've lived long enough, you've been on one end of this conversation or the other. You give someone a gift you're really excited about, and they get the gift and they say, oh, thanks. I love it. No, you don't. No, I love it. And you say, no, you don't. I can see it on your face. They don't know what their face looks like at that time. It's unconscious. I can hear it in your voice. We're bringing it to the conscious. We know this stuff happens. It happens on a daily basis in other conversations. So here are some of the things you can do with your voice to help you. Be aware of speed. And I don't mean do you speak quickly. I speak very quickly. I slow it down for when I present, but I speak very quickly. And truthfully, if I spoke like this, and then pretty much faster than I would normally speak in a presentation to speak about this speed, I could do that. You would understand it. It may or may not be pleasant for you, but we could get by. But by speed, what I really mean is varying the pace. We think of being monotone as speaking like a robot and nothing ever changes. There's no intonation. That's not the only monotonous tone. If we don't change our pace, people will zone out too. So when you're really excited about something, you speed up. When you want to be a little more dramatic, we slow down. And you can be extremely dramatic by slowing down even more. Think of music in a movie. Something's going to happen. Think of Jaws. Dun, 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 dun. And then when it was getting closer and closer, so the shark eating someone, Bruce eating someone, dun, 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 dun. Same thing. Take your cue from what happens in movies. They're the best storytellers on the planet. Change pace. When it's not exciting, it's not dramatic, it's just matter of fact, you speak at a normal pace, slower, faster when you need to. The other thing to do with your voice, change the intonation. Intonation is what a lot of people call inflection. They're two different things. Intonation is actually changing your pitch and your tone. So if you were a football coach at halftime, you'll be speaking like this, and we can do this. We can go out there. We can make this happen. They speak at a higher level, higher pitch, and their tone changes and their speed changes. Everything changes. When you want it to be more dramatic, again, you can maybe lower your voice a little, get a little slower, go low and slow, and you make that happen. That's intonation. You can emphasize certain words. In some sentences you say, when you're presenting, when you're speaking to others, when you're giving a proposal, even in normal conversation, in some sentences, you should be picking out a word and emphasizing it. They usually come closer to the end, but not always, the end of the sentence. Many of us don't emphasize words. We're just speaking matter-of-factly the whole time, and we're wondering why we don't keep people's attention. Pick out the words you want to emphasize. Like when I said before, if you take nothing away, take this, as opposed to if you take nothing away, take this. There's no importance to it. There's no emphasis. There's no, hey, you got to listen to this. This is important. So decide where you want to put the emphasis and hit words, as it's called. Make those words powerful. Make them connect. Make them memorable. Speaking of memorable, by the way, on average, people remember about 10% of a presentation. Your job as a speaker is to make that 12 to 15%. That's a home run. So that's another thing we can do. Emphasis, as I said, it can be in any particular word, often near the end, which is another reason you want to use diaphragmatic breathing. You don't want to run out of air and not be able to emphasize those words towards the end. That just doesn't work well. When it comes to speaking, this may be the most important thing you'll learn. The coolest thing about speaking, possibly the strongest thing you will ever say in a presentation, in a conversation, in a talk, is nothing. Here's why. When I'm speaking, everything I say, at least the way I say it, is new to you. It's not new to me. I've done this hundreds upon hundreds of times. It's not new. But if I make the mistake of just keep talking and not pausing, I'm not giving you the opportunity to let it sink in, for you to process it, digest it, decide what it means for you. And that's when we say people speak too quickly. Often it's not that we speak at a rapid pace. They're saying we don't pause and let them digest what we're saying. So learn to pause. When you make a point, pause, let it sink in. Here's an analogy for that. If you have plants at home, what happens when you go on vacation? You come back and that soil is hard. And if you take water in a bottle, if you take a watering can, whatever it might be, and you just pour that on top of that hard soil, what does it do? Rolls off to the side, doesn't do that plant any good. Pour a little on, let it sink in. Pour a little on, let it sink in. Pour a little on, let it sink in. Now, how long you wait to let it sink in has a lot to do with how important it is. Longer pauses for things people have to think about and figure out and how it applies to them. Shorter pauses for things that aren't quite as important, don't carry quite as much weight. So far, things you have to remember. Breathe. It's all about the audience. Pause. And for those of you who say fillers, so, right? This is how you're going to get rid of them. Go to PetSmart. Spend $10 on one like this, or save some money and buy $3 with the one that says PetSmart. One works just as well as the other, especially for our purposes. Give it to someone who cares. Do not give it to a significant other. Not that they don't care. They just have way too much fun with this. Give it to someone in your office, a colleague, whoever, and say, I'm going to do a 5-minute presentation. Every time I say, right, so, click it. Here's what's going to happen. They'll click it and you'll say, I didn't say Yeah, you did. That's why I clicked it. Really? I didn't hear it. As time goes on, you do this 5-minute presentation a few times, maybe spend a half hour, an hour at this at a time. After a while, you'll start hearing the or the or the right, or so. You'll start hearing those and you'll stop, which isn't good, but you're getting there. And then after a while more, you'll hear it, but you won't stop. It'll still annoy you, but you won't stop. After a while more, because you brought it to your awareness and it's becoming irritating to you as opposed to just the listener, you'll stop doing it. If you do this for an hour a day for a week, your and the like will be gone. And you want those to be gone. For those of you who are old enough to remember a blackboard and the down the blackboard, when we make a point, if we don't pause and let them digest it while they're thinking, when we say, right, so, that's like bringing our nails down that blackboard. And then we say more and they start to think again and we go, again and again and again. And that's when the phones come out or they start daydreaming or whatever it might be. They're doing anything but listening to you. An occasional not a big deal. We all do it. Try to eradicate that. I sat and watched a professor up in Boston, by the way, present once. And I don't sit there and judge people and critique people unless I'm getting paid or even asked to do it. I don't do it for my own edification. But once he said 10 ums in the first minute and a half, I took out a piece of paper and pen and just started making tick marks. And in an hour, he made almost 300. I'm wrong. In 90 minutes, he made almost 300. Do the math. It's a lot of ums. It was excruciating. So if you do that, stop at PetSmart tomorrow. It's well worth it. And if you do give it to a significant other, they'll have you taking out the garbage, doing the dishes, everything else with that clicker. It's a great training tool. All right, stance. How do you stand? Remember, people are looking for confidence. How do you want to look confident? Well, it's fairly easy. Stand with your feet shoulder width apart. Stand up straight. And if for any of you who have ever danced, I'm sure at one time or another, your dance teacher said to you, imagine a string just pulling you up slightly by the top of the head. And that's what you want to do. Just elongate your spine 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch. It's not the military shoulders back, chest out, chin out. It's when you stand that way and stand vertically and align yourself, your head's over your shoulders are over your hips are over your ankles. That's a confident look. But what do? Quite often we do this. Now you can't see the lower 2/3 of me, but I'll explain. We do this. Stand on one leg with the other leg kicked out a little bit. And when we ask people why they do that, they say it's more comfortable. Mentally, it's more comfortable, and I'll explain why in a minute. Physically, it's not. Why? How do we know it's not more comfortable? What do you do 20 to 30 seconds later? 20 to 30 seconds later? Remember I said this is a conversation? It could be one person, 10, 100,000. It doesn't change. The mind doesn't change how it perceives things. So say you and I are at a business after hours or a AMA event, and we get the customary 2.5, 3 feet away from each other to talk. And all the time you're talking, I'm doing this. You're going to be thinking a few things. He wants to go to the bar. He wants to go to the shrimp bowl. He wants to go to the bathroom. No matter where he wants to go, he wants to be anywhere except here with me. Don't do that to people. Just nice and comfortably, feet shoulder width apart, alignment, vertical alignment, and relax and have a conversation. This establishes confidence. Do not cross your legs at your heel, especially if you have heels on, because you'll wobble even more, but don't do that. Anybody, do you know why we stand that way? 2 reasons. One is to make ourselves smaller. I'm not comfortable, whatever it might be. I'm nervous. I'm going to make myself a smaller target. Try not to do that. The other is when we're very nervous, we protect our throats and our genitals. And when we cross our legs, that's exactly what we're doing. So don't do that. Again, feet shoulder width apart. Don't pace. If you're speaking, it's tough to pace on Zoom. It's a good thing about, one of the few good things about Zoom is you can't pace on Zoom. But a lot of times when we're up on stage or the front of the room, the energy goes through our feet and we start doing this, which is extremely monotonous. Don't do that. Calm down, calm your feet down. But you might also pace this way. And this is what I did when I was very young. 1 foot, 1 step up, 1 step back while I was speaking. Energy comes through your feet. All the way back to just relax. Feet shoulder width apart. Doesn't mean you have to keep them there. You'll see me as I'm speaking here. I'll move every once in a while. I just want to get blood back in my feet. It's not a big deal. You just can't be doing it the whole time. Again, becomes monotonous. People don't find confidence in you. They won't find confidence in what you say. Now let's take it to the hands. The question just about every public speaking coach and trainer gets asked is, what do I do with my hands? And the answer is, for the most part, what you normally would. But to keep you from flailing them around, there's a rule of thumb. And that's an oval from your chin to your waist, maybe 50% wider, maybe 100% wider than your torso. And you keep your hands in here somewhere. That'll help. I'm Italian. I know I don't look it, but my last name is actually Giosa. And I was brought up in an Italian household. And we used to say, if you tie our hands, we can't talk. One of my clients is Portuguese. He said he grew up saying the same thing. If you tie our hands, we can't talk. Most ethnicities are that way. Why are we that way? Because before there was the spoken word, we talked with our hands. Throughout evolution, that has not changed. And because we're visual animals first, we look at the hands, we look at the face before we listen to what people say. And if you don't think that's true, go play a game of Simon Says. With a good facilitator, everybody loses because we react with our eyes first. Even if you say I'm a tactile human being, I'm a audio human being. Yep, but we still will react with our hands, or with our eyes first. So know that people are watching your hands. And the most important part of your hands, the palm. Make sure people see your palms. I am still raising my hands every once in a while, even though you got to raise them high on Zoom. It's a very odd thing. But I want you to see that my hands are moving because we read hands. But normally they would be much lower, down around my waist, not 90 degrees because that looks robotic, down around my waist as if I were holding a beach ball. Don't bring your hands together. That's just cordoning things off. If you do, just move them back out and roll your thumbs a little bit. Not like this, not like this. Just roll your thumbs a little bit so people can see your palms. We like palms. It goes back to being safe. I want to know what's in your palm. Way back when, caveman days, huts, whatever, we walked across the village. I want to know, do you have a rock, a spear, a club, anything that's going to hurt me? I want to see your palms. Now, evolution, knife, guns, whatever. We want to see palms. And think of the back of the hand, backhanded compliment, backhanded slap. We don't like, for whatever reason, the back of hands. So every once in a while, show the palms. And think of all the religions who open their palms to pray. We like palms. They mean a lot. So breathe. It's about the audience, pause, and palms. Those are things that you can implement tonight and definitely tomorrow that'll help you communicate more effectively. You can just be speaking to one person in a hallway. That'll help. All right. Use your hands to illustrate. It was huge. It's really tiny. It flew by. It just kind of moseyed along. Because we react to hands, it helps convey our message much more effectively than just using the word. Use your hands. Okay, things not to do with your hands. Don't put them in your pockets. If we can't see your hands, unconsciously, we think you're lying or hiding something. You might be thinking, no, I don't think that. Unconsciously. You bring it to the conscious level, maybe it's not true. Unconsciously, as a society, that's what we think. Don't put them behind your back, same reason. Don't put them under your desk or under a table when you're speaking to someone, same reason. Let people see your hands. Don't cross your arms. It's creating a wall. So don't do that. Some people go, I just want to look relaxed while I'm talking. You're creating a wall. And also, you're actually putting pressure on your chest, even though it's minute. You're putting pressure on your chest, which means you can't fill your lungs with air the way you normally could, or as easily as you normally could. And you lose that ability to emphasize what you want to emphasize. All back to just relax and breathe. Don't do the fig leaf. You ever been to a conference or an awards dinner and they ask 5 people to come up and they're going to give them their awards one by one? And as the first one's up there on the podium, the other 4 people are standing there with their hands all the way down, crossed in front of them. It's called the fig leaf. Again, they're protecting themselves. Don't do that. Just let your hands hang straight by your sides. It might feel odd because you're wide open to the audience. And that does feel odd at first. But if you put your hands in your pockets, what's that doing? What's the difference between putting your hands down by your side or putting them in your pockets? It's virtually the same thing. Mentally, that little bit of cloth, when we put our hands in our pockets, we think it's protecting us. We feel more comfortable mentally. Physically, it doesn't make a damn bit of difference, but it does to the audience. Don't put your hands in your pockets. This comes down to the next book I'm going to write is everything I ever learned about public speaking came from my mother. Stand up straight. If you speak up, if you're going to speak, look people in the eye. Very important. Don't look over their heads. Don't look at the forehead. Look them in the eye. Not only do they get more confidence in you, but they feel connected. And all those, and take your hands out of your pockets. Mom was right. So we'll work on this last thing, and we'll wrap this up. This is what some people do for slides. They use it as a poor person's teleprompter, and they just stand there and read it. The problem with this is you can read to yourself faster than I can read out loud. And when that happens, people either tune out or they think, just flip the slide so I can read the next one. You don't want to be doing that. You should know this so well you don't need a slide. You can use notes. Just don't use your slides as your notes. So this is the slide I used way back when talking about fear of public speaking. All right. It's not, public speaking is not the number one fear. Ranks seventh behind clowns, fear of snakes, and fear of stepping on barefooted on a Lego. Okay. Anybody see a problem with this slide? Don't talk about my graphic design skills. Other than that, the problem is it has too much information. Everything you put on a slide fights for the attention of the viewer. Everything. So here I have public speaking is not the number one fear. I can say that. They don't have to read that. Then what's down at the bottom? My logo, my obviously promoting myself with my URL, and then your logo. A friend of mine named Jim was long retired, the head of a major marketing firm in LA. And he went up to a well-known company up in the Northwest. And he was getting along pretty well with the powers that be there when he and his team were doing a presentation. And a vice president stopped him. He tells me this afterwards. A vice president stops him and says, "Can I ask you a question? You're the third set of people in here today. And something's irritating me, and I'm hoping you can answer why. What's going on?" He's, "Sure, what is it?" Now, he didn't have anything in the middle. He just had the two logos. He said, the vice president says, "Why do you have our logo down in the bottom right-hand corner?" And he goes, "Well, quite frankly, you're you, this well-known company." He goes, "Yeah, but we know who we are. We don't have to see it on every slide. Why do you have your logo?" "Well, I want you to remember us. I want you to know who we are." He goes, and I'm being honest with you. And the vice president says, "If we didn't know who you were, you wouldn't be here." And what he was basically saying was, do it this way. If I'm going to say public speaking is the number one fear, it's not the number one fear. It's number 7, comes behind clowns, the fear of spiders, and the fear of stepping barefoot on a Lego. To me, maybe not to you, but to me, that's much more powerful. Don't have things competing. There are some companies I deal with where I train their salespeople, their sales staff, not for sales technique and all the things that can be taught by other sales training companies, but for actual presentation. And I have to go to war with the corporation about getting rid of their logo and whoever else's logo that they've left space for, so the slides will be more effective. Make your slides effective. By the way, when you bring up a slide, bring it up and pause for 3 seconds. Longer if it's a very intricate slide. Pause for 3 seconds, because you can't listen and look at the same time with 100% of your ability. Just can't be done. We think we can do it. We can't. And you don't have to look any further, especially before GPS. Think of when you're going to find someone's home. Never been there before. And you're looking for number 111. And unfortunately, it's not going 101, 103, 105, 107, 109, 111. There's, because of the size of the lots, it's skipping numbers. What do we instinctively do? What do the person in the other seat tease us about, even though they do the same thing when they're driving? We're looking and we reach over and instinctively turn down the radio because our mind can't process both at the same time, and we're trying to concentrate on the street numbers on the house. So bring a slide up, wait the appropriate amount of time, usually about 3 seconds, then start speaking about that slide. Help your audience out. Let them look at the slide, understand it, and then you can explain exactly what it means. That's the slides. Last thing, rehearsing. We used to say this was the way to rehearse. That's all we had. Now we have something better. This was all we had, but it's not good. You can't concentrate on delivering a talk and critiquing the talk at the same time. This thing, best thing ever invented. Steve Jobs invented it specifically for speakers. Not true, but almost seems that way. Rehearse your talk. Don't memorize it, but rehearse it. And when you rehearse it, record it. Prop your phone up, hit record it on video. Then the benefit comes with how you use it after that. I want you to review it 3 times. The first time you review it, turn up the sound, flip it over face down so you can't see the video. Listen to it. Am I saying ums? Am I speaking too quickly without pausing? Am I not pausing enough? Am I pausing too long? Am I not making sense? Am I repeating myself? Make those notes, make the corrections. Now look at it, flip it over so you can see it, turn the sound down. Look at your body language. Am I pacing? Am I moving too much? Am I not using my hands? Are my hands flailing all over the place, which doesn't make sense? Make those notes, change it. Now review it for the 3rd time the way you normally would, audio and video together. Odds are you've already made all the changes you're going to need to, but you might just catch another one or two. So make sure you do that. We know we got off to a late start, which was, for whatever reason, my fault on this side. So if you have any questions, I don't want to go over time and take up your questions now. But if you have any questions, contact me. My email is very easy. peter@petergeorgepublicspeaking.com. Very, very simple. You can go to my website at that, petergeorgepublicspeaking.com. You can get my cell number. I'll give it to you here, 401-742-1231. 401-742-1231. Call me, text me. I text like a 16-year-old, wish that was invented in the 70s. And I will answer your questions. Any questions you have pertaining to public speaking, whether we discussed it tonight or not. Now, I normally don't promote myself any more than that in helping you, but I do want to bring this up, and I'll tell you why. Massachusetts, since you're a Massachusetts crowd, Massachusetts will pay you for training. If you pay into the system, so basically if you're on payroll, Massachusetts will reimburse you. You pay me, you show proof of training, they pay you. 100% if you're a company no more than 50. So if you're incorporated and you're just you and you want to take the training, they'll reimburse you. As long as you pay payroll to yourself and payroll taxes, they pay. You've got a group of up to 12 or 15. That's all I'll take at the most at any given time. And they're all on payroll. You get reimbursed 100%, as long as you're not a company over 50 employees, payrolled employees. If you're 51 to 100 payrolled employees, same deal, except they reimburse it only 50%, figuring you are a larger company and maybe more able to afford it. In either case, it's a great way to get training. You're the only, Massachusetts, the only place I do this and talk about promoting myself this way, because it doesn't either cost you anything or just 50%. Whether it's just you who wants to be trained in public speaking and use that as a power tool, or if you have a group of people in the company who want to. All that said, contact me if that's favorable to you, and I will leave you with this. You learned about a little bit about dealing with your nerves, what public speaking is and is not, how to use your voice. Again, we're just touching on these things. How to use your hands, how to stand, all these things. Implement them. They recorded this. Ask for the video. Go back and look at it again. Implement these things tomorrow or as soon as you watch the video. And you'll be surprised at the difference, not only that it makes to the people viewing you, one person across a desk, whatever, but how you feel. And you'll be much more able to be calm, confident, and credible every time you speak in public. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. That was an excellent presentation. It's very, very practical. I really enjoyed that. And the recording will become available in the next few days. And we'll send that out to anybody that registered. I just want to remind everyone that AMA has a website where you can see future events. You can also find us on Eventbrite, and also going back to the website, you can learn more about membership, the resources that are available nationally and locally. And again, Peter, George, thank you very much for this presentation.
My pleasure being here, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Okay, see you later. Good night, everybody.